we can do things just a little bit differently to be creative and offer a different perspective on life. I'm Adaire Palmer, and it's my pleasure to welcome Eric Edmeades. Now, Eric is an international keynote speaker, author, and serial entrepreneur with business experience in logistics, information technology, business consultancy, and film production. Eric was born in South Africa, educated in Canada, and has lived in Ireland and England for 10 years before moving to the Turks and Caicos Islands, where he's based today. I may have pronounced that wrong. Eric is also passionate about nature conservation, wildlife photography, and disaster relief work. He is also founder, CEO, and majority shareholder of WildFit, an international nutritional coaching company that helps people break free of emotional eating, food guilt, and the manipulative practices of food manufacturing and marketing industries. So welcome, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. So, Eric, with what's happening in the world today, I know you've got a vast range of experiences, but the one I'd like to focus on, and as I know you, is as a WildFit, the WildFit founder and food coach, and I know people who are food coaches on your program, and so I've got quite a good glimpse. I've been through the WildFit program, and I do know the amazing benefits that it does offer. I would love to explore a little bit about how WildFit came about, because it's such a basic thing for people to have good nutrition and good eating habits. So
yeah, for me it was I was patient zero. I was sick as a kid all the time, and and I'd been visiting all kinds of doctors and specialists, and everybody had a different opinion on what I needed to do to make things right. And in the end, I had a couple of conversations with some friends of mine about food, and I didn't have a particularly bad habit. I wasn't like terrible with food. I was normal. We thought. And I decided to do a little bit of a food experiment, and 30 days later, every symptom I had was gone. And I was blown away by that. I wasn't in pain anymore. I was able to digest food properly. All of the acne that I had was gone. The sinus infections were over. Like, I was completely different. And it was such a powerful transformation in my body that I became really curious how it was that in, nearly a decade of talking to doctors, that not one of them asked me to rethink my relationship with food. Like, not one of them ever asked what I ate. Not one of them ever, suggested that I don't eat this or that I eat more of that. Never once did they ask me that. And yet that was the ultimate solution. And so I actually asked a doctor at one point, I was curious, and I asked how long they'd gone to medical school. You can imagine, like, when I was 21, I looked about 12, and I said, how long did you go to medical school? And he was quite 6 years to become a doctor. And I said, and how much of that time did you spend studying food? And it was none. And that was the day that I became really curious about the medical industry, about the pharmaceutical industry, and that would lead to all kinds of interesting curiosities about the food manufacturing industry, food production, food marketing, food lobbying, and recognizing that we are the biggest, truthfully, the most dangerous pandemic that we do face is the terrible food pandemic. It's orders of magnitude more dangerous than anything we're facing right now, but it happens slowly, and we've been manipulated in believing that it's our own fault.
Yes. I've been doing quite a bit of study, and it was a big eye opener with the WildFit program, and I think I was probably one of the first few through back maybe 3 or 4 years ago, even. So. So how did that morph into the WildFit program?
Adaire, it was such an interesting thing. I've been in business for a long time. My first business was mobile computing equipment and wireless networking technologies, and my next business after that was Hollywood special effects. We also had a 3D camera engineering company, and we had a military research and development company. And one of the companies we created was very cool, was doing medical simulation for the US military, simulating traumatic field situations for medics to practice with. And in all of this time, I really thought of myself as an entrepreneur who happened to have a hobby in the area of health and nutrition. And it's funny, I was listening to a friend of mine, actually an Australian friend of mine. He's he's living in England now, but he was talking about the difference between a hobby and a real passion. He said, like, today there are so many interesting opportunities popping up around the world that you should look to your own passions. But he said, don't mistake your hobbies with your passions. He goes, like, my hobby, he says, Daniel says, my hobby is snowboarding, but it's not my passion. Therefore, I'm not a professional snowboarder. And I started realizing I was making the mistake in the other direction, that my hobby wasn't food and healthy eating and that kind of stuff. That was my passion. My passion was to help people turn that stuff around. And about 6 years ago, I got really frustrated because my business clients were asking me for health coaching, and I would tell them what to do. And I would tell them what not to do. And then I'd see them a year later and they'd still be doing the things they weren't supposed to do. And they wouldn't be doing the things they were supposed to be doing. And it drove me nuts. I was like, what are you talking about? You're in pain. You have inflammation. You're diabetic. You're overweight. Like, why are you not don't you have enough leverage? And so I went and did a deep dive into marrying a couple of things. And I married my fascination with evolutionary biology and nutritional anthropology. And then I married that with my other fascination, which was behavioral change technologies. And so I've developed a system for constructing programs that are not educational so much as they are transformational. Yes. And we call it behavioral change dynamics. And so we applied that principle to creating the original WildFit program, which was no longer going to be a diet in the traditional sense where we simply said, don't eat this and do eat that. Instead, it became, as you know, a process of psychological and nutritional upgrading at the same time, so as to stimulate real change. And so 6 years ago, we did our first class with 8 people in it, and it worked. And then we did another class for 8 people, and then it worked. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of these, and then all of a sudden, a friend of mine who was in one of those classes of 8 people, he says to me, can I tell my tribe, can I tell my network about your program? And I'm like, I guess. And he goes, well, do you have a website? No, it's a hobby. And he's like, well, you better get a website. So we put up a website that day, and then he told his tribe about it. And where we were having like 100 people a year doing our program, it was a hobby. Suddenly 200 people signed up in a day. And it was like, uh-oh, we're onto something here. And then another guy did that about 6 weeks later. And then Vishen Lakhiani, the founder of Mind Valley, he did the program and he did the same thing. He told his tribe about it. Only 1,100 people signed up in a week. And all of a sudden we recognized that we were doing some things that were absolutely disruptive and transformational in diabetes. We have an 85% completion rate on a digitally hosted education platform. I mean, that's unheard of. And we're now 2 years in a row as the highest rated program on the Mind Valley platform. And that's, that's just, I think, a testament to how effective the program is. And there's not a day that goes by that people don't write to me with stories of recovery. I'm no longer diabetic. Or in fact, I just posted one that I got 2 minutes ago on Instagram. I just posted in my story that my dad was pre-diabetic before the COVID outbreak. And now he's not. He's now post-diabetic WildFit. That's a big deal, because one of the things we need to know, and we're going to begin to see, is that this virus is not ageist. It's not going after old people. It's going after people with 1, 2, or 3 serious health conditions, many of which are lifestyle related, including diabetes.
Yes. And I think that's it is something that I heard you say, which I think is how our immune system is our last line of defense.
Yeah.
And in this environment, it's interesting that we are, we go down to the shops and we can buy what we're, especially this has been my experience since being, I guess, WildFit educated. I can go to the shops and I can still get everything that I need, because it's not the fresh fruit and vegetables that are walking off the shelves. It's the shit food. It's the pasta. It's the flour. It's the sugar. And
I had so many WildFit clients from all around the world send me photographs of the fresh produce section of their grocery store. There's no toilet paper, but there's broccoli.
I know, right? And the broccoli is $11 a kilo, but we buy it anyway. So, but it is. I'm just astounded, because when you get into that and it becomes the new norm, well, personally, I think, oh, like everybody's doing it, but they're not. We need to get this message out there really fast.
Yeah, there's a couple of important things to know about that. The one is, for a long time, okay, this is important. Immunity is a really interesting thing. So, it doesn't really matter how you eat. It doesn't matter how healthy you are. That won't actually protect you from exposure to any virus, because what protects you from exposure to the virus is that you have the ability to make antibodies, from that virus. So it doesn't really matter how healthy you are. That won't stop you or get you from getting the virus, but it will have everything to do with how your body fights, with how your body recovers from the infection. I think that's a really important distinction for you, Lake. And for a long time, and I've had this debate for years, which I think I'm going to be vindicated over the next couple of weeks, but I've had a number of immunologists, virologists, doctors, people coming along and telling me, hey, it doesn't matter how you eat. If a virus wants you, it's going to get you. And what I believe we're seeing in the early data, and what I think will come out in study after study after study after this whole COVID thing is done, is that we will absolutely see that this virus was much more dangerous to people that were obese, hypertensive, type 2 diabetic, and so on. And what's interesting is the health science. There's the science advisor to the health minister of Italy, which has had such a bad run of this. He came out and said that of all of the deaths that were being attributed to COVID-19, only 12% of them were actually just COVID-19. And in every other case, COVID-19 was more like the straw that broke the camel's back. In other words, the people came in and they were very ill anyway, and COVID-19 just kind of finished them off. Now, if that's true, then what that means is that, let's say you have a mortality rate of, say, 10%. We think it's probably more like 3%, but let's say it's 10%. But if 90% of those people are ill as a result of lifestyle diseases, what it really means is, in a healthy population, it has 0.1% effectiveness of what we think it is. So if it's 10%, it's really only 1%. Or if it's 3% like we think, then it's really only 0.3%. The rest of them, it's not actually lethal. It's just finishing off what other diseases will be doing. Now, that may sound a little cold and calculating, but I think what it really is a call to everyone to get really clear about putting in the good stuff and reducing the amount of bad stuff they're putting in. Yes,
absolutely. I just want to acknowledge here, we've got Nige in Brisbane, Australia.
Hello, Nige.
Early, and TJ from South Africa.
TJ, are you well? I always freak out South Africans when I can understand Afrikaans, because I don't sound South African at all, but I am. I was born there. My family's from there. My original, my family's like original settlers. So it's always good to see the South Africans tuning in.
So welcome. We're truly a global audience as well. And TJ, I don't know whether you wanted to make a comment, but he's saying that people in South Africa are under lockdown. Well, we are pretty much globally, but people are going around if nothing's wrong. So no, I really would like to focus on the nutrition, but if you did have words about the importance of...
Oh, wow. This is so difficult. I'm going to tell you that as of right now, I am of the opinion that lockdown is the approach. I am open to other discussions. I think there is a dialogue to be had that some countries might want to take a different approach, like landlocked countries, like a country like New Zealand might want to take a slightly different approach because they're landlocked. And so they can't get affected by people on the side of them. They may want to take a different approach. But right now, what I'm very clear about is that this policy that people have had of denying how serious this situation is. And by the way, I am specifically talking, for example, about President Trump. Now, look, I'm not a big fan anyway, but then again, I was never a big Hillary Clinton fan, so I don't take sides. I'm just saying I don't want his job. I would never want that job, but I really wouldn't want it right now. And obviously he's trying to do the best he can with the information that he gets. But the fact is that when you start off a month ago telling people that this situation's under control and that it's no worse than the flu, and that when we have 15 cases and within a few days we're going to have no cases, when you say stuff like that, what happens is people believe that it's not that severe. And even just a few days ago, you have a bunch of spring breakers in Florida dancing at nightclubs. Yeah. And what I want to say to anybody who thinks that it's not that serious is, you're right. For you, it's probably not that serious. If you're not past 65 years old and or suffering with diabetes, obesity, hypertension, or autoimmune disease, or any other major afflictions, then it's probably not that dangerous for you. But you risking the infection of other people is unconscionable, unethical, and disgusting. And so go home and stay home and stop spring breaking and dancing around and going shopping. It's really important that we get this. You're right. It's not dangerous for you, but it's dangerous for society. And I'll give you a perfectly good example. 5 weeks ago, I was in Tanzania. I was there on a very serious, like deep in the woods, like seriously out in the bush with the Hadza bush people. And these are hunter-gatherer people. I'm in the middle of nowhere. So obviously, if you have a medical emergency, it's not ideal. And halfway through the trip, I had to take a trip in to the nearest town, not a city, you understand, not a place with technology. I mean, a small, I got there and I started experiencing unbelievable stomach pains. Luckily, I had my friend, Dr. Ara Supaya, with me, and he convinced me that I needed to somehow get myself a CAT scan. And an hour and a half later, I was on the table having an appendectomy. Now, I want you to understand something. Had that happened to me a day or two earlier or a day or two later, I would have died. Because by the time they got me on the operating table, they said that the only reason they didn't rush me in sooner is that I wasn't responding to the pain normally. I was just walking around talking to people, which is not normal for somebody who has a perforated burst appendix, which I did. And so it was a very serious situation. But let's just take a second. I was incredibly lucky that it happened the exact day that it did, but even more so today, because the last thing I'd want to be is right now living in New York or Milan, or any of the other cities that are epicenters for this thing, and suddenly need an appendectomy and find that there are no doctors available, that there's no space in the hospital. And so if you think it's okay to go around shopping, if you think it's okay to ignore the lockdown, I really hope you don't need a hospital in the next couple of weeks.
That's a really good point. And I'd just like to also, big shout out to my mum. Hey, Mum.
Hello, Mum.
And it's great to have her here as well, all the way from Adelaide. So we're actually the borders in Australia. We're basically we're only out for shopping. They've closed all the clubs and hotels, so there's no opportunity to be out doing that sort of thing. So so we are finding that there is a new problem, and I've also heard you speak about this, Eric, was about sitting on the couch watching Netflix and eating crap. Seriously, this is I see this as a time for us to be able to renew and revitalize, and I know we have choices. So have you got some words for people who are sitting there going, well, there's nothing else to do? There is other things that they can do. So maybe a bit of inspiration, perhaps.
Let's start with this. I want you to imagine, everyone, that you have an old 1964 and a half Ford Mustang collector's edition. Gorgeous. You've been waxing it. It's got all original parts. Everything's beautiful about it. One of the things you need to do to make sure it stays healthy is you need to drive it every so often, right? You need to take it out. If you don't take it out, it'll degrade much more quickly. In other words, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. Now, what's interesting about that 1964 and a half Mustang is that it's not a regenerative machine, and even a non-regenerative machine needs to be used in order to maintain its health. Your body is actually a regenerative machine, and so it knows when to do maintenance based on your use of it. And so if you don't use it, it doesn't do that maintenance. So let me give you some direct examples here. Your muscles, your body only really wants to put on weight that it believes it needs to have. And that's true of fat or muscle. So if you are not using your muscles, your body goes, well, we don't need them, so let them go. And then you'll start having muscular atrophy, which is really tough on your metabolism, and it's tough on your shape, and it's bad in every possible way. So when you don't use your muscles, they get weaker. And then your bones, well, your bones require impact that you would get from walking and running, and also torque. In other words, when you pick up weights and you lift really heavy weights, it's not just your muscles that are being tested, it's the bone is being bent in there as well. And the more torque and tension you put on your bones, the more energy your body puts towards strengthening them. So if you do not use your muscles and your bones, and this is going to be true of your cartilage and every other aspect of your body, I'm just using these measurable things right now. If you don't use them, you're going to lose them. But then there's another reason, and it's really important. So your body has a pump to get the blood to move around. That's because blood is urgent and important. You got to move it around. And why is it urgent and important? Because of oxygen and other things. And so therefore you also have a diaphragm that is the pump for your lungs to make sure that you get air in and out, because guess what? It's urgent and important. But your lymphatic fluid, which in case you're not aware, I'm sure most of you are, but your lymphatic fluid is fluid that zooms around your body and it cleanses you. It cleanses you. It cleans your cells. All right. It doesn't have a pump because cleaning your cells is not urgent. Oh, but it is important. And the reason it doesn't have a pump is that in a normal, natural environment, when we don't have food delivery and cars and buses and planes, trains and automobiles, in a normal, natural environment, it would be absolutely standard play to walk 5, 6, 10, 12 miles a day, every day. And to go up and down and to climb and to twist and to torque. It would be normal to be doing that every single day. And so your lymphatic system piggybacks upon your muscular contractions to move lymph around the system. So if you sit on the couch and don't move, you're not cleansing your cells. You are asking for trouble. It's absolutely imperative that you get up and move around. Look, if you're drugging yourself with Netflix right now, which by the way, I think a little bit of that's probably just fine. I'm enjoying a little myself in the evenings. But if you're giving Netflix 4 or 5 hours a day of your life right now, then first of all, I want to say to you, fine, if you want to do that, do that. But every time the show stops and you get ready for the next show, don't let it just run into autoplay. Get up, stretch, go for a 15-minute walk, come back and watch the rest of the show. And you know what might happen? You might find that by doing that walk, you're not even interested in the rest of the show. That's the quirky part. And then one more thing on this. If you've ever said to yourself, you know, if I just had more time, I'd write a book. Or if I just had more time, I'd clean my house more. Or if I just had more time, I'd start a business or something like that. Well, now, if you haven't done those things, what you're finding out, it was never about the time, because you've got that now. And so stop giving the time to Netflix and start thinking about productive things. Like, do you want to learn to play an instrument? Do you want to learn how to sing? Do you want to learn how to do public speaking? Do you want to learn how to write software? Do you want to write a book?
Yeah, spend more time with your kids. And now they're homeschooling. Oh my God, I got what I wanted in spades.
Yeah.
So there always is. Just hi to Luke as well. Luke is on the Gold Coast. And TJ, now you might be able to help me pronounce his name, because.
Do you know, as much as I can do that, I can't pronounce that. I mean, Tiart. I don't know. You tell us if we got that right. We're gonna go with TJ. The J is often like a Y kind of a thing, and so that's what I would think. But we'll give it a go. We'll see what he says. But let's answer his question one way. TJ, we're gonna go with for now. TJ, is it good to use food supplements instead of fruits and food? No. No. Okay, now let's talk a little. Okay, let's talk a little, because I do think supplements are a good idea right now. No question about it. But not instead. The key is in the word. It's right there in the grammar. Supplement. Supplement, as in addition to, as well as, also. It's not instead of. And by the way, I'm so glad you asked that, because I see a lot of people going, well, I don't need to get my oranges because I'm taking my vitamin C. What? Your body evolved to get its vitamin C from natural food sources. So I would love to make sure that you're still doing that. Now, you might want to top up, because we do have soil nutrition depletion problems, and the food is not so fresh as it used to be. And so, yeah, supplementing might be a good idea, but replacing, absolutely not. And I'll tell you, I saw a story about this that your question just brought up to my mind. Dr. Spock, not the pointy-eared one, the other one, the pediatrician. He really broke with the industry, and he came out against dairy milk, which was a big deal, but he was right. He was dead right. He came out against dairy milk for babies. That's a bad idea. And then a friend of his, and I say friend, it should be a friend in air quotes, but it's a friend of his was being interviewed, and the friend said, oh, I don't know why he said that stuff. I think he might be losing it. Like, basically accused him of being senile. And then in the same interview, the interviewer says to him, well, I mean, do you think it's really important, like Dr. Spock says, to eat your fruits and vegetables? And the doctor, he's a doctor, a medical doctor, says, no, I hate that stuff. I just take supplements. And at that moment, I would love whatever university he got his medical degree from to strip him of it. Like, that's an unbelievably incorrect statement. Yes, take supplements to supplement, but do your very best to get your nutrition from whole food sources. Great question, TJ.
Yes. Wow. That's obviously a lot of passion there, Eric. Like, wow. So for those people who need a nudge, the cues there or the clues that you've been given by Eric, if you want to get up and do something different, this is the time to do it. You have the time, you have the opportunity, and if you are watching Netflix, do that 15-minute walk between episodes of whatever you're binge watching. And if you are stuffing chocolate or chips into your mouth, what do we do there? Just on the last few minutes, because that's usually, they go hand in hand, don't they? Well, they tend to.
You know, I think that I want to bring up a couple different principles. One of the principles of WildFit, as you know, is that your health is far more determined by you getting enough of the good stuff than it is by you getting rid of the bad stuff. So all these diets that focus on taking things away from you as the first step, that's one of the reasons they fail. I want you also to know, anybody who's watching right now or watching the recording, if you've ever failed at a diet, I want to let you off the hook. You didn't fail the diet failed you. If you're overweight, if you're type 2 diabetic, if you're hypertensive, it's not your fault. I really want you to hear me. It's not your fault. I don't care who said it was. I don't care that they told you that if you moved more and ate less, you wouldn't be so overweight, or whatever that fat shaming garbage is. It's not your fault. It's the fault of really a truly unethical food production management system around the world, particularly starting in America, but frankly, everywhere today. So what I want you to know is that during this time, one of the very best things that you could be doing is stepping up on the good, natural, whole food things that you need to be eating. You need to be eating a wide variety of vegetables and really good quality meats, fishes, and eggs and that kind of stuff, and nuts and seeds. And then that's about it. Maybe a little bit of seasonal fruit, but not even so much of that. You don't want a lot of blood sugar while this virus is going around, I can tell you. And then what does that mean, not eating so much of? Well, it would be ideal not to be eating things like chocolate and refined sugar and dairy products and things that are going to stress out your immune system. But the first thing to do is to eat enough of the good stuff. The good news is, when you start eating more of the good stuff, then what ends up happening is you have less cravings for the bad stuff. That said, if you're going to eat a little of the bad stuff, all I would ask you to do is do it without guilt. Just do it and don't punish yourself emotionally about it. If you're going to eat it, but then give yourself 3 or 4 days without it. You know, don't let it become a habit. Let it be, I wanted a treat in this moment. I'm going to have it. And I just undertake that I'm only going to do this once every 4 days at maximum, or maybe once a week, you know, whatever your threshold is for that. And then if you really want to change your relationship with food, if you really want to have what I would say, what we call food freedom, the ability to eat what you want, when you want, as much as you want, or the ability to not eat what you wish you wouldn't eat when you didn't want to eat it, right? It's freedom's both sides. If you really want that, then come and check us out. Check out getwildfit.com and do the 14-day challenge. And the 14-day challenge can completely change your relationship with food.
Well, I'd have to say I've been through the program, and it is amazing. It is absolutely doable, and the support you get is phenomenal. So I can highly recommend it. We'll drop some links in the comments for people afterwards. And I just want to say shout out to Deborah. She's from New South Wales, all the way from Deborah. And we've got another South African here, France. So,
hey, France, you know, you guys that are in South Africa, I'll tell you that one of my heroes in this space is, oh God, all of a sudden his name went out of my head. Professor Tim Noakes. He's really one of my heroes in this space. And for those of you who are in South Africa, I mean, anywhere, you can check him out anywhere, but you guys should be proud to have him in your country. He's fighting a really, really solid fight in the food revolution.
Awesome stuff. So, Eric, we're about out of time, but did you want to have any last words that you'd like to share with us?
You know, I would leave you with this thought. You know, the thought is, life is on pause in a lot of ways. And the good news is that it's on pause for just about everybody. So it's not like you're falling behind, but it is your chance to get ahead. Something I noticed in my business many years ago is that if I was willing to work on the weekends, that gave me a head. It gave me a head start over my competitors who are not willing to work on the weekends. And of course, then there's an issue of, well, what about family time and so on? And this is different than a weekend now. You know, there are a lot of people that will sit on their butts and achieve nothing during this time. So what I would challenge every one of you to do is this experience, this exercise. Step one, I want you to look back and think to yourself, Would you be prepared to go back to the problems of 2 months ago? How happy would you be to go back and face the problems of 2 months ago compared to today? It's an interesting question. Step 2, I want you to look back at, say, 2019, and I want you to think about your very best emotional times, like the times when you were at your happiest and really you're most fulfilled. And then when you can identify those times, it's a good idea to make a list of them. And then when you've made a list of those times, what I'd like you to do is to write down what you were doing, who was there, and where you were. And then I want you to make your post-COVID plan, because obviously you need to be doing those things with those people in those places when this is all over, because they were the peak emotional things for you. And it'll give you a sense of excitement about building a truly incredible post-pandemic existence. And then the last thing in this exercise is I want you to think about who you want to be when this is over, right? Like who you want to be when this is over. Is there another language you'd like to learn? A musical instrument you want to play? A skill you'd like to develop? Would you like to learn how to do software development? Would you like to learn marketing? What would you like to achieve during this time? What I want you to figure out is the difference between the time that you have right now. What is invested time? What is wasted time? And I'll put it to you this way. Invested time is time you spend with your family. That's invested time. Invested time is time that you spend on your body, moving it, working out, eating well, shopping well, cooking well. Invested time is time that you spent learning a new skill, even if it's a recreational skill. I bought myself a guitar. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm trying to do my best. I got time, right? May as well play the guitar. But I'm also working on a bunch of other stuff. I launched a TV show for the first time ever. I launched Thrive Time, and I've never, ever done that before. My team and my fans have been pushing me to do a podcast or YouTube show forever. Now I know how to do it. Didn't know before. I'm learning. So I ask you again, who would you like to be when this is all over? And then once you've got that, then write down what are the investments in time you need to make to become that person. If you do that, you will be one of the ones that comes out of this pandemic stronger, fitter, smarter, happier, more fulfilled, and better situated to handle whatever is next, because it will not be the same as it was before.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for those words of wisdom, because it really is. I love it that true leaders are stepping up, being a beacon of light in these times, and you are really one of them. I've caught one episode of your Thrive Time, and I'll be hooking up for a regular. I'm new fan here, so thank you.
Thanks very much. We hit 500 subscribers today, and we haven't even marketed it yet. I'm really excited.
I'll pop a link here as well, because we can get some people over and from My Time TV. So thank you so much, Eric. Really appreciate you, and appreciate you popping in and sharing your wealth of experience and wisdom with us. So that's it for Be My Guest for today's show. I don't actually have a regular time that I do this, but obviously it's now nearly 6:30 in the morning here in Brisbane, Australia. So we're working around international guests this time. But thank you, Eric, and thank you everybody for joining us. And we will see you next time for Be My Guest on mytimetv.live. Bye for now.